The studio lights burned brightly across the set, illuminating every crease of intensity on Judge Judy's famously stern face as the cameras rolled lived to millions across the country. It was supposed to be a special crossover episode, a high-profile, televised panel meant to blend the spectacle of courtroom drama with the raw electricity of modern political debate. And the producers had booked Jasmine Crockett, a sharp-witted congresswoman with a legal background as fierce as her reputation. From the very beginning, tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. Because everyone knew Judy thrived on confrontation, and Jasmine never retreated when challenged. The opening minutes carried a false civility, Judy wielding her trademark gavel of authority while tossing curt questions, and Jasmine responding with measured precision that betrayed none of the heat simmering beneath. But as the conversation shifted from light banter to pointed interrogation, the set morphed into an arena, and the energy coursing through the studio audience signaled that they were about to witness a clash that would ripple far beyond television. Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes narrowing like a hawk about to strike, her voice rising as she demanded answers to a series of rapid-fire accusations framed as questions. She accused Jasmine of being evasive, of hiding behind rhetoric instead of facts, her words laced with the stinging bite of condescension. Each phrase rang louder than the last until finally she screamed outright, her voice thundering across the microphones, the pitch of raw frustration cutting through the broadcast, like glass shattering against stone. Gasps swept across the audience, some leaning forward in anticipation, while others recoiled in discomfort. But Jasmine herself did not flinch, did not blink, did not even shift in her chair. Her posture remained poised, her eyes steady and unyielding, her hands clasped lightly as though she were simply waiting for a storm to pass. And in that long, unbroken silence, after Judy's explosion, when even the production crew held their breath, Jasmine finally moved, tilting her head ever so slightly, lips curving not into a smile, but into the kind of cold, restrained expression that spoke louder than 1,000 words. Her voice, when it finally came, was low, deliberate, and chillingly calm, the kind of tone that instantly shifted the balance of power in the room without the need for theatrics. "Are you finished?" Jasmine asked, the words crisp enough to slice through the tension like a scalpel. The silence that followed was deafening. For it was not a question, but a declaration. An assertion that she was not here to be berated like a defendant trembling before a bench, but rather as an equal, a professional, and someone who refused to cower under the force of volume alone. The audience, still riding the echo of Judge Judy's scream, now found themselves hanging on Jasmine's every syllable. And the contrast between the two women could not have been starker. Where Judy had erupted like fire, Jasmine countered with ice, a coldness that burned just as powerfully because it carried the weight of control. She adjusted her seat ever so slightly, her eyes fixed firmly on Judy, not in defiance for its own sake, but with the composure of someone who knew that true authority was not seized by shouting, but by commanding silence. The camera zoomed in, close enough to catch the faint flicker of uncertainty flash across Judy's face, a split-second recognition that perhaps, in all her years of dominance, she had finally encountered someone she could not simply intimidate into submission. Jasmine leaned forward then, her voice steady, as she dissected the accusations hurled her way, dismantling them piece by piece with the precision of a surgeon. Every rebuttal was laced not only with fact but with the subtle sting of wit, exposing the hollowness of Judy's theatrics in leaving the audience, murmuring in recognition of a tide shifting right before their eyes. The producers in the control room exchanged frantic looks, sensing that what had begun as a spectacle of Judy's dominance had spiraled into something far more unpredictable, something raw and uncontainable, the kind of moment that would ignite across social media like wildfire before the credits even had a chance to roll. Jasmine did not raise her voice once. Yet each word she spoke carried farther and struck deeper than the thunderous scream that had preceded it, and the dynamic began to shift so visibly that the audience's body language changed in unison, leaning toward her as though drawn by a magnet of composure and strength. "Respect," she continued, her eyes never leaving Judy's, "is not earned by volume. Nor is it commanded by fear. It is sustained by truth, and truth is not intimidated. The studio erupted in murmurs at her phrasing, the kind of line destined to be clipped and shared endlessly online, but Jasmine pressed forward, unbothered by the swelling reaction. She dissected the premise of Judy's accusations with sharp clarity, referencing legal precedents, congressional records, and the principles of debate, weaving together logic and law in a way that left no room for doubt. Each rebuttal wasn't just a defense, it was a lesson, delivered with the authority of someone who had argued in real courtrooms, who had battled through hearings, and who knew the stakes of standing firm in the face of hostility. Judge Judy, for the first time in memory, looked not enraged, but cornered, her attempts to interject faltering against Jasmine's unwavering rhythm. The control she usually wielded like a weapon slipped further with every passing second. In the control booth, one producer whispered that this was television gold, while another muttered that the network's phones were about to light up with complaints or praise. Maybe both, because what was unfolding was no longer scripted entertainment, but an unscripted duel of intellect and presence. Jasmine never once broke eye contact, even when Judy attempted to pivot or regain footing, because she understood the psychology of power. And in that moment, silence became her most effective ally. Whenever Judy raised her voice again in small bursts of protest, Jasmine answered with a pause, a steady stare, a single decisive statement that sliced the noise away like a blade through paper. The audience, initially torn, began to applaud softly, then louder. Their claps no longer for Judy's theatrics, but for the unshaken resolve of the congresswoman who refused to be diminished. Judge Judy's face, etched with decades of courtroom authority, twitched with flashes of disbelief as Jasmine refused to bend under pressure. And though Judy tried to reclaim her dominance with a sharp retort, it fell flat against the congresswoman's unbothered rhythm. Jasmine leaned back in her chair now, as if to signal that she had all the time in the world, her hands still calmly folded. Her voice level, but resonant as she addressed not only Judy, but the millions watching. "This isn't about entertainment," she said, her gaze shifting briefly toward the cameras before returning to Judy. "This is about dignity. And when dignity is sacrificed for the sake of spectacle, everyone loses." The line hit like a thunderclap cloaked in quiet thunder, and for the first time, the audience rose not with laughter or gasps, but with genuine applause that rolled like a wave across the studio. Judy's eyes widened at the breach of her control. The audience had always been her chorus, but now they were rallying behind Jasmine, drawn by the cool, unshakable force of her presence. Producers in the booth scrambled, some urging to cut to commercial, others whispering that cutting away would only ignite backlash, because the internet was already exploding. Hashtags with Jasmine's name were trending in real time. Clips from viewers recording their television screens were being uploaded at lightning speed. And within minutes, she had shifted from a guest under fire to the uncontested focal point of the broadcast. Judy tried one final tactic, a piercing scream of, "Don't lecture me in my courtroom." But Jasmine countered with the faintest raise of her eyebrow in a reply, so cold it froze the room. "Then perhaps you should remember. This isn't your courtroom, it's the people's stage." The audience erupted, standing to their feet now, clapping, cheering, whistling, their energy electrifying the studio in a way that cameras could barely capture. Judy, momentarily stunned, sat back in her chair with her gavel clenched in her hand, but with no words to follow, as Jasmine's quiet authority blanketed the room like a tide rolling over sand.